The M-Wing, Innovative Aircraft Control. Inspiration: Burt Rutan's aircraft studies from early 70s. Fascinated by his concept ideas, we designed our aircraft in the canard configuration. Canard studies have envisaged substantial disadvantage of this configuration. Lift on the main wing can never reach its maximum value because the critical angle of attack, stall, is exceeded earlier on the front wing. It results in significant loss of performance in certain stages of the flight. Higher pilot control skills are required. The problem is even more critical when flaps are deployed on the main wing. The aircraft becomes less stable on high angles of attack. Burt Rutan's solution to this problem in the Starship was to use a variable geometry front wing. Side effect: the aircraft configuration becomes significantly more complicated. Our studies resulted in the conclusion that the angle of attack of the front wing should be variable, depending on numerous factors. At that time, first aircrafts with artificial stability were designed, and we believed this is to be the only way to build the perfect canard. Years later, we figured out what had been wrong. There is a simple solution to the canard stability problem. The aircraft model presented on the photos is in canard configuration. The tail controls are blocked and not active. The front wing has a dual functionality, both balance and control. It is set to angle of attack that is exactly needed to balance the aircraft in any flight phase. The model is flying with speed close to the stall, and please note that the angle of attack of the front wing is significantly lower than on the main wing, just the opposite to the common canard. EM-10 Bielik project test flights experience was the breaking point. Because of the aircraft configuration, short front gear resulting in a too low angle of attack on the runway, higher takeoff speed was necessary to lift up the aircraft nose. High and negative lift on the tail was necessary for aircraft rotation. The problem to resolve was, how can the aircraft nose be lifted using only aerodynamic force on the low angle of attack, low aircraft speed, and in various aircraft configuration? We found the solution. This solution was to add an additional horizontal balance and control surface to the front of the aircraft, rotating on the axis that is located forward of the point of resultant aerodynamic forces produced by this surface. Because the surface is free hanging on its pivot, the zero aerodynamic lift is produced. If any torque is implemented on the pivot, the surface will respond with a lift. This lift force is independent of the angle of attack and aircraft speed or configuration. It depends on the torque applied to the pivot only. It means it is fully controlled by the pilot. When zero torque is applied, the surface is free hanging. This additional surface does not affect the stability of the aircraft. The idea was implemented and tested on a remotely controlled aircraft model. Wingspan around 1 meter, fully aerobatic. The model was in classic configuration with rudder and horizontal stabilizer, but additionally fitted with a free-hanging balance and control surface at the front of the model, pivot forward to the point of resultant lift. Center of gravity of the model was in the same position as before the modification. Test flight result: no change in aircraft performance and control. The next step was the flight test of the same model with balance and control surface, the M-Wing, active. The actuator producing adjustable torque was installed on the pivot of the M-Wing. This practically constant torque was applied by the radio-controlled servo that stretched the rubber cable. The tension range of the rubber was between 0 and the force sufficient to produce on the M-Wing the lift equal to 15% of the model weight. The first flight was performed with zero tension of rubber cable on the M-Wing, but in the next flights the full range of tension was successfully implemented and tested. Test flight result: same aircraft performance and control. The recorded elevator position after the model touchdown was exactly the same as right before the landing. It was 3 degrees down, since earlier landing of the same model without M-wing resulted in elevator's position 18 degrees up. This means all 3 aerodynamic surfaces produce positive lift. M-wing, because of the torque applied; main wing, as per definition; elevator, because of its angular position. The development was continued. A comprehensive range of wind tunnel tests confirmed our ideas, and by the way, we saw on the charts what is the essence of our idea. From the shown graph of the pitching moment as a function of angle of attack of the aircraft, it can be seen that the lift force produced by the canard does not affect its stability. Changing this force is illustrated in the graph by successive curves that, and this is the essence of the idea, are almost parallel to each other. Innovative ideas should be verified as soon as possible, so the next step was the construction of several flying scale models and performing flight tests. The first model, as well as the future ones, perform full acrobatic maneuvers, even including inverted flight and controlled rolls. First models, independent from the canard control surface, have classic rear tailplane, which after a relatively short stage of tests was fixed. The model, which was initially controlled by the tailplane, flew at a later stage controlled only by the canard. Qualitative verification of design assumptions obtained by a fan for flying model of a wingspan of 3.5 meters is a good opportunity to become acquainted with the method of control of the canard, and thus the model, using additional control tabs. Results of the flight tests of the model have exceeded our expectations. In the course of several hours of flight, we have found, among others, that the model is flying stable both in cruise as well as takeoff and landing configuration with deflected split flaps, giving high pitch moment. It was also discovered that deflections of the canard under turbulent air gusts reduce its influence on loads of the airframe structure. The swept main wing, in combination with substantial winglets at tips, allows us to fly at very high angles of attack due to formation on wingtips of so-called Kasprzyk vortex. A very interesting and spectacular feature of the model was its ability to maintain steady inverted flight, which is rather impossible for the classic canard configuration. And the most important thing, thanks to appropriate proportions of parameters, size and angle of deflection of control tabs, it is possible to obtain, at the same time, maximum lift forces on the main wing and on the canard, which for the classic canard plane is impossible by definition. This last feature is the main advantage of the new system. This advantage is the ability to build airplanes with more than 12% increase in capacity with the same size and comparable aerodynamic drag. During the development of the new control system, at some point we have reached the wall. Theoretical analysis, wind tunnel tests and flying models clearly show that the new system is at least promising, but if it is so simple and the effects are so profound, why aren't planes of this type flying yet? Why has nobody invented something like it? So the next step was flying a plane with a pilot on board. To clear any doubt that change of relationship between aerodynamic and inertial forces, so different for the scale model and the real plane, do not result in unacceptable dynamic stability. The first attempts of fast taxiing, lifting the nose and, if necessary, performing short flights close to the runway were not encouraging. Even an experienced pilot experienced difficulty in maintaining a nose-up position on the runway because the control system proved too sensitive. Conclusion: back to the roots, temporary horizontal tailplane, like on the first test models, and flight tests. First, nearly 40 flights in a straight line at altitude of several centimeters up to several meters over 2.5 kilometer long concrete runway at Mielec airfield. At this stage, of course, with classic control and the canard freely suspended. These tests were essential for further flight tests. They helped us establish aircraft parameter changes that should be made before attempting to flight with the final system. In practice, these changes proved to be minor, such that we were prepared for and we could perform on regular basis during tests. But we had to know, and to know means to examine individual parameters step by step. In the end, no one did it before us. Well, the first full flight of the aircraft. Attempts to control with the new system, first on the ceiling and later during the whole flight. More flights. And to conclude this stage, a few traffic patterns. Treating our research project seriously, we installed flight data recorder so that we can continually analyze different phases of the flight.
Dobra, to jest, prawda? Teraz zaczynamy.
Performed tests and their positive results were basis for including in the report the pilot's opinion that the aircraft is suitable to fly to another airfield. This opinion was sufficiently supported by other documents recording the course of tests, so the Civil Aviation Authority supervising these tests issued an approval, and on September 29, 2014, Małgosia II, in the company of Cessna 172, fly approximately 200 kilometers on the way to the family nest where it was created. Małgosia II was piloted by first-class test pilot and Air-Enter Boeing pilot Jarek Rozbud, who had performed flight tests over Mielec airfield every day. Why Małgosia II? Simply because the first Małgosia was a powered sailplane owned by the designer, who brutally cut her up and built a new airplane using parts of the first plane. Everything to speed up work and reduce the cost of building of the experimental machine. What next? The pilot already wanted to get rid of the additional temporarily installed horizontal tailplane, but for practical reasons, to obtain more research materials, we want to keep it to study other methods of controlling the canard. An interesting design feature of the new Małgosia is its dual control stick. Left stick is used for target control, canard only, and the right one to control the classic horizontal tailplane. Eliminating additional tail, which to our knowledge will not affect steering properties of the airplane, will be an important step in the work to build a usable version of our aircraft. Will it be a platform for male-class unmanned aircraft or any other aircraft? Time will tell. And the future? These far-reaching goals? Well, we dream of large, even very large airplanes, because this is where the benefits of our method will be the greatest.